What's happening, guys? So in this video, I wanted to talk about one of the most boring conversations that you'll ever hear motorcyclists pine on over, and that is, what is the Goldilocks zone for horsepower on the street? You know, a lot of times guys will say somewhere between 60 and 110 horsepower for the street. That's ideal. That's all you need. That's a big verse that'll come out of that song, but really, what is the right amount of power for the street? And I'm not talking about for beginners or for experienced riders. I'm talking about for anybody that's looking to use a motorcycle for transport on public roadways. Well, let's dive into it, because I think that Goldilocks zone shifts quite a bit as you start to look at different environments. So starting off with an urban environment, this is an area where you're going to want something very small, nimble, and a motorcycle that is not going to be distracting with its power output or how it puts power to the ground. Scooters do extremely well in this. They don't have to worry about a clutch. They're fairly lightweight, and they're easily dartable in and out of traffic. They're easy to filter through traffic, and so that is where they do their best work. Other small displacement motorcycles like the Triumph Speed 400 or maybe a Royal Enfield 350, these are motorcycles that will do well in that environment, although those are more traditional bikes that do have a clutch. This is not an area where you need a motorcycle with a ton of power. Matter of fact, a ton of horsepower can be more of a distraction, and you don't need those kind of distractions in busy, claustrophobic areas. So in that respect, I would say, 15 to 35 or 40 horsepower might be more than enough to get you into and out of traffic safely and with confidence. Now you start to move away from the urban environment. Well, it's going to really depend on what your type of riding is. If you're not spending a whole lot of time on the highway, but you do need a motorcycle that can spend some time of, at least maybe 15 to 20 minutes at a time on the highway, a motorcycle between 60 and 85 or 90 horsepower might be just what you're looking for. Something that's not necessarily overtaxed going down the highway, but that horsepower number will give you plenty of power reserve to get around traffic and to get around cars that are going more slowly. So in that type of an environment where it's primarily maybe a rural, small town environment where you're not going to really be on the highway too much, that would be a perfect amount. But what about a commuter bike? Something that you're going to be taking into town, something that you're going to be on the highway more often with. Well, in that respect, you really may be in that 80 to, say, 130 horsepower range. Power spread that will be able to get you into and onto the freeway with a lot of confidence and at highway speed, say 75 to 85 miles per hour, will give you enough of a power reserve to then get around cars with multitudes of confidence. And that's what you're going to need if you're going to be using this motorcycle regularly and frequently on the highway. But more to the point, you want a motorcycle that is not going to be geared so aggressively that you are spinning the thing out of its mind at those 65 to 75 mile per hour highway speeds. This is where larger displacement and torque can really come into play. And so the horsepower number in this particular instance may not be as important as maybe a torque number. So motorcycles like a Bonneville T120 is going to be a very nice accommodation if you're going to be riding in those types of conditions. Also, the Triumph Tiger 900. Notice a pattern here, I'm kind of into Triumphs, but you get the idea. Motorcycles of that kind will do extremely well in that environment. But it's also not just about power, it's about the ergonomics of the vehicle itself. Well, you take that philosophy and move it a little bit further down the line, you can get into cruisers and long distance traveling and things like that. If you're into that kind of thing, then you're going to be looking at a much larger motorcycle, and typically those bikes will have power adequate for the task. So you really don't worry about it so much there if you're buying a purpose-built bike for cruising the open roads. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit. I know that for a lot of guys, it's pretty easy to get lost in the sauce when you're talking about motorcycles and how they really do fit in the various environments that we're talking about. But notice I didn't really get too deep into the type of bike that's sitting behind me. Now, this is where overkill really begins. If you start getting into motorcycles that are lighter weight, 130, 140, 150 horsepower and above, these are sporting machines. This isn't necessarily what I would call reliable transportation. These are fun motorcycles that you're buying primarily because, well, you want to have fun with them. And so they don't really fit into a specific genre. Is it fast enough? Does it feel good? Then that's what you need to be more concerned about. Are the ergonomics right for your body type? Are you long-legged? Are you long torso? What motorcycle fits you best? Or are there improvements on the motorcycle that maybe catches your eye that you can make to make those ergonomics work for you? That is going to be more important than the power output with machines like this. Whereas before, you're looking for a motorcycle that can, well, perform a task and be utilitarian. For something sporting, well, you do need a motorcycle that's going to be more fitting to your skill set, but more importantly, you need a bike that's going to be comfortable and is going to be fit for the task of whatever kind of hooliganry you're going to be putting it through. In other words, don't buy a motorcycle and then ask it to do more than what it is truly capable of. I've been down that road and it can be somewhat frustrating. Start off with the bike, assuming you've been riding for a while. Get the bike that is going to be fit for the task with the power to match and you'll be fine. Now, is there ever too much power for the street? Well, all of us could say we want more, right? No matter where you are, you could always do better with more power, right? I mean, isn't that how we all are? But there does come a point where the extra power is simply, well, you can't really tap into it. And what I found with motorcycles is that, well, for the type of riding that I do, 150 to 175 horsepower at the flywheel, or say 135 to 160 horsepower at the rear wheel, is about the most that I can take advantage of on the street. If you're into roll racing, then obviously the sky is the limit. But there does come a point where too much power, well, it does become a distraction. You really can't use certain amounts of power on the street unless you've got a lot of free and clear real estate to work with. And in that case, well, the power number simply really is more of a flex. I don't really see a true benefit to having 200, 230 horsepower at your disposal on the street unless you're going to really, honest to goodness, be able to use it. If you are entertaining yourself in closed course action, roll racing events, drag racing, then yeah, you have a bike that you can ride to and from the track that's going to be as powerful as you need to hit a number that you're trying to go for. But that's really why I would want a bike with that much power. Again, for me, motorcycles that are more in the manageable area. And really when I say manageable, I'm talking about maybe 150, 165 horsepower to the rear wheel. That to me is the sweet spot. You've got typically a lot of torque to play with. They're going to be a lot more forgiving. And yes, it will make the big number up top, but bikes like the one sitting behind me, well, they're more tuned for mid-range, and that's really where the sweet spot and the fun can lie. So, can you have too little? Well, yeah, you can, I suppose, if you're trying to ask a motorcycle to do something that it simply isn't designed to do. Can you have too much? Too much is a bit of a subjective term, but not if you're using it in the right way and in the right places at the right times of night. You can get away with having a lot of power and enjoying it. You're just going to be very limited in the theater, so to speak, that you can present it. But post up your comments, let me know what you think. What is the right amount of power for you, and how are you going to use it? And with that, we'll catch you on the next one. Adios.